But I'm here today to talk about the forthcoming new schedule at the high school. And I want to state from the beginning that this is my perspective, my point of view. If I do reference my colleagues, it is through conversations that I've had with about 50 of them. But please understand that this is coming from me. I'm not speaking for anyone else when I say this. And I think the DML class is a good example of, to take us into the beginning of it. If we have our new schedule next year, that class will seek to exist as it does right now. Because it's an elective in our department and we have to cover all of our required courses, electives will have to be dropped to a half-year course. So I'll be going from 115 hours roughly each semester to share all this information with my students down to 63, an average of 63. So that's more than half of the time that I'll lose. That is a genuine concern for me. I think this course is vital, maybe more so now than ever. One of the things that Stephanie Leighton asked me, how has your job changed since the proliferation of fake news and since this last election? And I told her it's become more challenging and maybe more important than it ever has been. Our students desperately need their civic education and they need the tools to undo the spin that surrounds our government and our political system. And while I understand that every schedule we come up with is going to have a flaw, they all will, there's no question about that. For me personally, I think that the one major flaw in this particular schedule is not necessarily, it's not something we can undo and fix as we go forward. And for me, that's the fact that this schedule wasn't created because we took a great deal of time and researched our current schedule and decided that it wasn't meeting the needs of our students. This schedule was created because 7 years ago, we went through one of the most contentious bargaining negotiation seasons I've ever seen in 23 years of teaching. And I want to make it clear, there were bad actors on all sides. There is plenty of blame to go around to everyone for that particular circus. I guess that's the word I need to use. For folks who don't know what happened, the school committee was told you have to cut your budget. And it was suggested that one way to do that is to cut some compensation costs. And how do you do that? Well, teachers at the high school can pick up a 6th class, which I want to make note of. I'm going to ask you guys to think of any other profession, any other career where someone is asked to do more work. And they say, oh, sure, I'll be happy to do that, but I'm not going to charge you. A plumber who has 5 appointments in a day and is going to spend the remainder of it working on invoices and paperwork gets a call from a 6th person. He doesn't say, sure, I'll come right out to your house now, but don't pay me. My colleagues who are working 6 classes, that's exactly what they've been doing. They had an increase in their workload with no compensation. And if you average out the amount of time or the percentage of additional work, it goes well beyond the raises that were finally put into the contract that was ultimately passed. So that's why when this contract came up for a vote, obviously high school teachers rejected it, but our middle and elementary school colleagues, they passed it. There was a raise in the contract for them, and I probably would have done the same thing in their position, but ultimately this fell on the shoulders of far too many high school teachers. And both sides agreed that this was such a bad idea that they put language into the contract about, well, how can we fix this? There's going to be inequities. Some people will teach 5, some will teach 6. We'll create a new schedule. I don't know that that's the best reason to create a new schedule. For me, a schedule for a school should be driven by asking the question, what schedule will give the greatest number of students the greatest number of opportunities for success? That's not where we started from. The group that came together, the committee that was formed to create the new schedule, had teachers, administrators, representatives from the community, and I believe that those folks did their job in good faith. But a frustration for many of my colleagues and myself was the fact that the remainder of the faculty was never asked, what are your ideas about a healthy schedule? What are your complaints about the current one? What works about the current one? The schedule committee created a schedule. Our colleagues were not allowed to talk to us about it at all. We couldn't ask them questions. We couldn't give them feedback. They couldn't ask us questions. So I feel that there wasn't a legitimate voice of teachers in the creation of this schedule. It was completed, they did their work, they did their due diligence and said, hello faculty, here's the schedule, here's the new schedule.
Could you try to sum up soon? Could you try to sum up?
Yep, I will. We've gone through, after the schedule was presented to us, teachers were put on committees and asked to basically troubleshoot both the new schedule and its implementation. And while doing this, we met regularly through the beginning of the year. Several of the committees found significant flaws in the schedule, logistical issues that, to my knowledge and the knowledge of many of my colleagues, have not yet been addressed. I can give you examples, et cetera, but in the interest of time, I won't. The other thing is the new schedule brought in things that we were able to do when we weren't teaching 6 classes. Personalizations, when we had duties, hall duty or CAF duty or study hall, you met students that you didn't necessarily have in class. When I did CAF duty, I walked around the entire cafeteria, talked to, hi, how are you doing, what's going on, et cetera. If I ran into a kid in the hallway on hall duty, hey, you've been in the hall for about 10 minutes, so everything okay, what's going on, let's get back to class. So we had that, but adding that 6th class took that away, and now we're putting something back in to do that. So I want to finish up with just some genuine fears that I know I have and that many of my colleagues have. We do have a concern that the schedule might be used as a bargaining chip in negotiations. You can either have a high school schedule or teachers can have a raise. It's not out of the realm of possibility of happening. That would pit high school teachers against middle and elementary school teachers again, and that's a horrible position for anybody to be in. I don't think anybody should contribute to creating that scenario. There is little faith and little trust that should we implement this new schedule and 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, we decide that the H block isn't working well and we need to cut the budget again, well, we can make that a 6th class. I know there's language in the contract right now that forbids that, but there was never language before about teachers teaching a 6th class either. So when the contract opens up, there's a fear that that will happen again. There's also no guarantee that town meeting will vote for the additional costs of implementing the schedule, especially because the whole thing was started to save money. And I guess the final thing that trips me up is that we're talking about creating a new schedule, but we're ignoring one topic that's been researched in great depth over the last 30 years, and it's conclusive that high school and middle school students should be starting their day later, and elementary students should be starting their day earlier. There's ample evidence for the positive impact that has on middle and high school students as well as younger students, and any of you who have young children, you know they're knocking on your door at ungodly hours in the morning, and trying to get a high school student out of bed in the morning is crazy. So I guess I'm asking that before we move forward with this new schedule, we take a long, hard think about it, most importantly because of the impact it's going to have on our students, but also because I'd like us to spend our limited budget wisely. So I'm asking for that consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you.